Hello, and welcome back to France Made Simple, the podcast where I demystify life in France, debunk some of the many myths that surround living here, and debrief you on just about everything you might need to know. So, today I had planned to have a guest in the studio with me who is the co-founder of a miraculous product which has been developed by her and her other half, who is also my equally miraculous osteopath. But we had technical issues and she was unable to join the session. So we've decided to reschedule that. So you'll have to wait for a couple of weeks to hear all about Arthur and his magic balm. And it really is magic. And Arthur really is magic, but more about that later. And if you are in the Normandy area, I can highly recommend an osteopath as well as the magic product. So today we're going to be talking about something completely different, but it's something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. And it came about from a discussion I had with a group of students a couple of years ago about values and life values and moral compasses and things like that. And it struck me at the time that a lot of the things that came up that we were discussing were things that are very, very applicable to those of us that make the move to France, or those of you that want to make the move to France. They're all kind of qualities that you need to have. And as I've spent nearly 40 minutes failing to get Amaline connected and in the studio, it struck me that this was a very apt moment to talk about those qualities and what you actually need to, on both a personal and practical level, I think, to make a go of it here in France. So without further ado, and in no particular order, these were the qualities that came up in the discussion. And the first one was trust. And I think that's really important. You need to trust in the process. You need to trust in your ability to make it work here. You need to trust neighbours. You need to trust that you will be able to make that move. And, trust kind of overlaps into belief. But I think having some kind of faith in the fact that it will work out, it will be okay, you are going to be able to do it. I think that's a really, really important part of making the move here to France. And I've had to trust that we'll be able to get the tech working in 2 weeks' time and reschedule our podcast together. So trust is very important. The next one that came up was integrity. And I think this is really key, actually, because I think we've all come across people in life that have absolutely zero integrity. And when you move to a foreign country, I think it's very important to not only be your sort of true self, but also to treat those people around you, with honesty and integrity. And hopefully you will also encounter people that do the same. So you don't get ripped off by the man selling you some really crap wood as firewood. Yep, this has happened to me. But, you have to kind of not go down to that level. And I've met so many migrants, immigrants, expats here in France who have zero integrity, and they're always the ones that bounce up to you at some kind of coffee morning, apéro, dinner party, and within 5 minutes are trying to sell you their services as either a gîte cleaner, swimming pool maintenance man, llama groomer, roofing contractor, general builder, you name it, whatever the conversation subject is, or whatever you might say that you might need help with, maybe, I don't know, walking your ferrets, suddenly they will be able to do that for you. Now, these people have zero integrity. They're just after a fast buck, need to be avoided by like the plague. And I think it's very important to hang on to your own integrity in these kind of situations where you're a bit outside of society or outside of that familiar society that you came from, whether it's back in Texas or back in the UK. You don't have those kind of societal structures around you anymore. And I think it's very easy for people to lose their integrity and start acting differently. So you need integrity. You also need courage and bravery. And it is scary making that leap and making the move. And again, you need to be brave about it and believe that it's going to work out, and be brave when you go and speak to the neighbours and your French is pretty non-existent and you know it's going to be stressful and awkward. You have to basically just put your big girl pants on and go for it. And the same goes with making appointments at the tax office or phoning the vets for that, vaccination for your cat. Be brave. Nothing terrible can happen to you. As my granddad always used to say, they can't chop your arms and legs off. And that's a very good thing to remember in life because, it can be intimidating having to do everything in a foreign language and it can be stressful. So be as brave as you can and you'll find it less stressful. The next quality on the list was perseverance. And yeah, you need perseverance here in France. Even the French need perseverance because you have to keep banging away at French bureaucracy and admin until you get the result you're looking for. I've just seen that this week with my partner's loss of his invalidity benefit for no apparent reason whatsoever, no notification from the CAF, and he's had to persevere on the phone, via email, going into the office, back on the phone again. You need lots and lots. You need perseverance by the bucket load in France just to get anything done in terms of bureaucracy and paperwork. But you will get there, so keep at it. Then we got honesty. And I think this comes back to my, second or third point about integrity? Be honest. Be honest when you're selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace. Be honest about why you moved here. Be honest about your reasons for wanting to come to France. Be honest with yourself if it's not working out. All of those kind of things can have a huge effect on your mental health, I think, if you're not honest with yourself. And sometimes France isn't for everybody. Moving overseas isn't for everybody. And there's no shame in holding your hands up and saying, actually, I'm not sure that I really like this anymore. And I've made a massive mistake. I personally have made so many mistakes over the years, from buying a house in a hilltop village where I thought we would be able to integrate and learn to speak French, and not realizing that it was kind of the village from hell, and that's why the property was so cheap. And yeah, I had to hold my hands up and say within 2 weeks of buying that house, to be totally honest, I think we're screwed up here. So I think being honest with yourself and honest with those around you is very, very important. Now, kindness, not just be kind to everybody around you, obviously, but be kind to yourself. Again, it goes back to if you're struggling and you're having a hard time and you don't feel like your French is improving and you don't feel like you're making friends, don't beat yourself up about it. Accept that all of these kind of things take time, they take effort, they don't happen overnight, and just be kind to yourself. Don't set your expectations too high. The same goes for, if you're renovating a property, maybe be kind to your other half if he's not doing it as fast as he should be. Don't expect to have it all done and dusted within a certain time frame, because that probably is not going to happen. Just go with the flow and don't beat yourself up about things too much. Determination. Wow. Yeah. You need a lot of determination to move overseas in the first place, to get all your ducks in a row, to get all that paperwork sorted, to pack everything up, to find a property, to unpack it all, to start a new life, to register your kids at school, to join local clubs and associations. Sometimes even getting the sat-nav to work to find the nearest local supermarket requires a load of determination if there's no mobile signal on that particular day in that particular part of rural France. So determination and kind of general grit and keeping going and saying to yourself, right, I've made this decision, we're doing this, it's happening, it's going to be all right. Now, the next one was faithfulness, which probably sounds like it's got absolutely bugger all to do with moving to France. But if you think about it in terms of being faithful to your dreams and your ambitions, then yeah, I think there's a resonance there. Be faithful to that idea that you believe that there is a better life waiting for you in another country, and be faithful to that idea that it can happen, it can be made possible, and it will happen if you throw enough effort at it. And I suppose as well, it also ties in with sticking with it. You know, don't give up at the first hurdle. We all have days where it just seems like life is way too much for us, and you want to basically rip your internet cable out of the wall or throw your Wi-Fi box across the room because nothing's working and you just feel like the world is against you. We all have days like that. And, you know, sometimes you just need to take a step back and think, right, okay, I'm going to be kind to myself. I'm going to cut myself some slack. I'm going to take the afternoon off. I'm going to go for a nice walk. The sun is shining. I'll come back to this and it will work at a later date. So, you know, stick with it, I think, is the message where faithfulness is concerned. Be faithful to your dream and your goal and your ultimate ambition, which is creating that new life here in France. Now, another one we got was positivity. And yeah, now sorry, a book just dropped on my foot. Don't know what it's doing under there anyway, but hey. I am generally a very positive Pollyanna type person. I do tend to look on the bright side, and sometimes I can be quite unrealistically positive in the sort of, oh, it will be all right, that will work out, But perfect example of this last week. I had been sent, for some random reason, even after 25 years here living in France, a paper declaration from the tax office. And I had also received an email reminding me to do my tax declaration online. Now, of course, I left it till, I think, 48 hours before the deadline. Just log on, do that as normal. No, the reason I'd been sent a paper declaration was because this year, for some random reason, I wasn't allowed to do it online. So I couldn't. So I missed the deadline. And at this point, I thought, fuck, basically, what am I going to do now? And I was at the other end of the country, so I couldn't even pop into the tax office. So I had to wait a week and then gird my loins and channel all of my positivity and bounce in there and explain the situation to them. And they were absolutely lovely, told me not to worry about it at all. The first word the woman said when I said I've missed the deadline was, c'est pas grave. What's going to happen is I do have to go back in August and sit down with them, and then they will apparently it was normal that the system had been blocked because they'd sent me a paper version. Why they had, nobody could really explain. But by kind of channeling my inner positiveness and thinking, oh, it'll be all right, you know, they can't cut my arms and legs off. The worst they could do is fine me. But I held on to my grandfather's mantra of they can't cut your arms and legs off. And you know what? It's absolutely fine. So, next quality is idealism. And this can be, I think, maybe a bit of a double-edged sword. One can be too idealistic. I think I was way too idealistic when I thought about moving to France. I envisioned, oh God, why can't I say some words? It just makes me laugh so much. Right. So my vision for my life in France was that I'd be living in this perfectly renovated farmhouse, really tasteful slate, flagstone floors, beautiful old polished antiques in the corners. The sun would be always shining. The kids would be running barefoot through the fields of wildflowers outside the window. I'd be sitting there with a chilled glass of white wine and writing a best-selling novel, while my husband would be cooking something that was simmering in the background on the Alga. I mean, obviously in the southwest of France, and Arga's not really that practical, Catherine, but, part of my vision, he'd be, cooking away on the Arga. It would all be blissful. He'd look at me and say, "Are you happy, darling?" And I'd be like, "Oh yes, darling, I'm so happy." Well, obviously life was not like that. I ended up as a single parent with 3 kids in an unrenovated hovel that was so bad that when the man from the CAF, the Child Benefits Agency, came round to check that I really was a single parent, he kind of threw his hands up in horror, made a phone call and released an emergency payment. So yeah, I think I had very rose-tinted spectacles about life in France, and I was way too idealistic about how easy it would be for my then husband to adapt to life here, which it just wasn't for him. And yeah, I think, that was a really hard lesson to learn, that the life that I'd envisaged, they see I managed to say it that time, the life that I'd envisaged and the life that I actually got were 2 quite different things. But the life that I have is actually pretty bloody good. And, I've made it work, and I've made it work through bravery, courage, perseverance, determination, and being positive. So I think, hang on to your idealism. Don't let it run amok. But, idealism is a good thing. And I am an idealistic person. I do generally always see the best in people. And I do 9 times out of 10, that works out absolutely fine. Very occasionally I get taken for a ride, but it's very few and far between. And I think that if you do believe in, the ideal and aim for your personal ideal, then you're more likely to get there. Well, that's my theory anyway, and I'm sticking to it. Now, the next quality was adaptability. And as we saw as I mentioned at the start of this episode, I've had to adapt today because I don't have a guest. And adaptability is, I think, very, very key to life in France, because there's always changes. Things never go quite to plan. You will often come across situations where you think something's going to happen in one way and it happens in a totally different way. So I think you need to be adaptable and flexible. And, when you're renovating a property and a delivery doesn't arrive, you could start tearing your hair, gnashing your teeth, etc. But sometimes it's better just to kind of shrug and say, c'est comme ça, bon, normal. All right, I'm not going to sweat it because there's nothing I can do about it currently. And I will just wind myself up about it and get stressed. So be adaptable, be flexible, go with the flow. And this will also help your social life as well. And it's something that I have always struggled with because I'm not a terribly flexible person in terms of planning and organizing things. I like to know what's going to happen when. And over the last couple of years, I've really learnt that sometimes you just have to go with things being dramatically different from the kind of way you thought they were going to work. And if somebody knocks on the door and says, let's go for a drink, even if you'd planned to do something else, go for that drink, because you might then meet somebody else, have a chat about something else. It might lead to a job opportunity, a social opportunity. So I've learned to be a lot more adaptable and flexible, and I think that's no bad thing. And I think it's something that's really helpful here in France, where I do say often that life here is akin to being in a multiplayer video game where you have a mission in the morning and things happen during the day and you end up doing something completely different. So go with the flow. Now, the next 3 are all quite similar. We got helpfulness, generosity, and giving back. And this is really, really a big part of life in France. And neighbours will often go out of their way to be helpful to new arrivals, and especially in rural communities, it's a given that you help people and you are generous and you give back. They give you 3 lettuces, you give them a pot of damson jam. There's a sort of, almost black economy in terms of, but not bartering, because it's all done with a generosity of spirit that's actually really, really lovely. My partner gave a guy down the road a pile of wood that we didn't need. He gave him a beehive. We recaptured what's known as an essaimage, which is when the bees swarm, yesterday, because I've become quite expert at spotting them. And they always seem to happen when I'm around, and then I start, there's an essaimage. Anyway, so we recaptured a swarm of bees. I've actually got some video footage of that, which I'm going to stitch together and stick on YouTube because it was super interesting. Although I must say I did watch from a very safe distance. Anyway, so we recaptured a swarm of bees. He then goes and gives them to somebody's son in the next village who is keeping bees, not to make honey, but just for the wildlife and, the sort of positive aspects of having lots of bees in the ecosystem. Now, you can go and buy a swarm of bees and that's like €120, but he gave him the bees, and I can't remember, but there is something, that's it. His dad had fixed some paddle boards previously, So I think that kind of generosity of spirit, being helpful, giving back to your community, it goes a very long way in terms of how life in France operates. And it goes a very long way rather in how much it will help you to become a part of that community. It will be noticed, even if it starts off slowly. Gradually, people will not just refer to you as the English or les Américaines. They'll be les Américaines qui nous a donné les œufs tous les semaines. The American who gives us eggs every week. It's little things, but it's really, really important. And finally, we've also got being socially available, which I think goes back to my being adaptable point of view, but not point of view. But before I get to that, understanding. And I think that's really, really, really important. You need to understand that France is different. It's not the USA. It's not the UK. It's not Australia. It's not any other English-speaking country. Anglo-Saxon sort of mentalities do not cut it in France. It's a country where the notion of customer service doesn't particularly exist. The French are very proud. They're very proud to be French. There's a big, strong national cultural identity. You just need to understand that even though it's not Africa or Asia, and you might think it's similar, it's actually really very different. And I think once you grasp that, which is something I definitely struggled with, especially coming from the UK, because geographically we're really close to France. So I thought it would be just like the UK, but with slightly better weather and, cheaper wine, cheaper property and better food. And it's not. It's just so different. And those small cultural differences that I've talked about in previous episodes and will almost certainly come back to again, they make an absolutely huge difference to your day-to-day existence. So I think understanding that France is different, the French are different, not bad, not better, not worse, just different. I think that goes a long way in terms of helping you to integrate into your new community and your newly adopted country. And so my final point of the values that we felt were important to bring to life here is being socially available. And again, this is something that isn't always easy. And I remember when we first moved here, a German mother in the village telling me to join in all the school activities. And I thought, yeah, but I never joined in all the school activities in the UK. I was never one of those mums that wanted to stand by the school gate chatting away and volunteer for this, that and the other. I would literally drop my kids off and run, and the same at home time, pick them up and run in the opposite direction before somebody asked me to bake a cake or something, God forbid. So, it is hard to force yourself to try and be the kind of person you're not. But having said that, France is a very sociable country. And if you do want to meet people and make friends, and most of us do want some kind of community. I mean, there are people who are very happy with their own company or just being with their partner and they don't want anything else. And they're very happy living in complete isolation. That's absolutely great and fine. And, fair play. But the caveat that I would add is at some point, unfortunately, most of us need a helping hand, whether it's just something basic like you've broken your leg and can't drive to the shops anymore for 6 weeks. It is important to have a supportive community around you of friends and contacts. And the only way you will get that here in France is by being socially available and going to those events in the village, joining committees, groups, associations. I mean, ideally do something that you actually enjoy doing, because if you're not into, I don't know, flower arranging, there is absolutely 0 point making yourself go to the flower arranging class at the village hall once a week. But if you are into organising the annual village fete, get on board, join that committee, make some friends, make some contacts. And if nothing else, you'll get to know exactly what's going on in the community and who's doing what with who. Same for hanging out in your local bar. I'm not suggesting we all become dipsomaniacs, but you can pop in there and have a coffee. And over time, people will start chatting to you and get to know you. And, we are social beings, and I think community is really important, especially when you move to a foreign country and you need to almost recreate that from zero. So I think my final point that's really important here is being socially available and making that effort to get out there. And I think it's interesting as well that nearly all of these points, whether we refer to them as values or ideals or whatever, nearly all of them overlap in some shape or form in terms of, you need courage, you need perseverance, you need to give back to your community, you need to be kind. I think it's quite an interesting subject to think about, and to think about how those kind of values that we hopefully live our life by can help you on the road to integration into your new life in France. Anyway, that's about all I have to say on the subject today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been interesting. Please do ping me a message either in the comments on here or on Instagram, either on the France Made Simple Instagram account or my personal one, which is @catskeets, and tell me what you think are the qualities that people need when they move overseas. Or if there's anything major that I've missed, or anything you agree with, or anything you disagree with, please let me know. I love getting your comments, and they're always really interesting. And I also love getting the ones that give me ideas for new episodes. And I am working on the one about having diabetes in France. So that will be coming your way fairly shortly. I have got quite a busy few weeks coming up, but I'm still beavering away in the background. Thank you all very much for listening. Please do follow me on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts, because it really does help other people find us. And we're now getting to the stage where I'm getting a lot of downloads, and, I'm not up there with, Stephen Bartlett just yet, but let's keep going. So your support is really, really, really important. So please do like, subscribe, follow, tick whatever boxes you can. Leave me some nice reviews and comments. I really appreciate it. Thank you, as always, to our sponsors, Fab French Insurance, who really are fab. in name and nature. And if you need any kind of insurance, whether it's for visas, healthcare, car insurance, property insurance, just tap Fab French Insurance into Google and you'll be taken directly to their site. All the policies and documentations in English, and they have a fabulous English speaking team who will make your life here as simple as Frenchly possible. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time.